I picked Greatland Gold, and that's with gold stocks extending gains this Thursday. But we did early in the week have Greatland Gold boosting its resource at Telfer and the Havarian gold projects in WA. So on the day, it saw a pretty big spike up, but today again, Citi upgrading Greatland Gold to a buy with a $16 target price. Citi says, those positive drilling results will be a catalyst for extending the mine life beyond consensus expectations. So look, I just couldn't resist doing a gold miner today because, as you know, Luke, the gold miners have been coming under a lot of pressure. Greatland Gold in particular, is this one that you would be happy to hold in the portfolio? Or considering the share price rise over the week that we've had, if you sort of missed the boat on this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure about in the short term whether you've missed the boat or not. I think, 8 million ounces of gold, 370,000 tonnes of copper is a decent resource. I think when you dig into this resource upgrade a little bit though, most of it comes from most of the relevant part of it comes from the West Dome open pit, of which, 90% of those ounces come from this high grade component, which is kind of 79 million tonnes at 0.52 gold and 0.05% copper, which is like 1.3 million ounces roughly. So, when you compare that to, say, Antipa Resources or Antipa Minerals, with their resource, which is, 36 kilometres north, they just put out a resource this morning, 69 million tonnes at 1.33 grams per tonne gold, 2.9 million ounces, so, and higher copper grades as well. So, our thesis here is, Greatland looks fine, it's going okay, but, Greatland's a $9 billion market cap, and its 36 kilometre neighbour with arguably a better quality, higher grade resource is only $380 million market cap. And Greatland Gold already owns 6% of Antipa. So, we continue to believe that Antipa is a takeover target, potentially this quarter, with both of these new resources announced this week. We think, any strategic management team, of which the Greatland Gold guys clearly are, with their sort of history and track record, they would want to be guiding the market to the fact that they've got a longer mine life, they've got sufficient production to feed this very hungry mill they've got at Telfer, and they don't need to do M&A. Our view is that, it's highly unlikely that their main project, the Havieron development, goes smoothly. We think ramp up and approvals there are, difficult, and, making a move on Antipa, sooner rather than later is going to be the cheapest, most value accretive way for GGP shareholders to maximise the value of their main asset, which most people would think is the gold in the ground. I personally view as the Telfer mill. So while I'd happily be a GGP shareholder, I think your big bang for buck opportunity here is in the takeover target Antipa AZY.
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. You are still on that train, even though they've got their increased resource. Sanji, Greatland Gold surprised me.
It surprised me too, but I'd expect to be surprised by a company like this. I mean, looking at some of I only had a brief look at some of these analyst forecasts that have been coming out, and there was, forecasts so high, and the variances within some of these analyst forecasts, and the huge swings that's been happening in here on Greatland. I mean, it's a perfect example of why it's so difficult to value a business like this. They're expecting it to go up, they're expecting it to go down, because there's so many different variables. And when you're an analyst trying to enter all the data into the models, everyone has the same level of data, but you're calculating them so differently. So you can end up with significant variances in your output. Usually the market doesn't see that, because we tend to, or as analysts tend to normalize them down to where the market is and kind of go within a standard deviation or two standard deviations of the market. But in this instance, we saw a whole lot of analysts come out with expectations on this that were so variable. It kind of gives us as outsiders an insight into the industry to say, the analyst forecast can be significantly different depending on your inputs. So I don't envy analysts. They've got one of the hardest jobs in the world. They're incredibly bright people, so I'm not trying to have a dig at them. It is just they've been asked to do an impossible task, trying to estimate and forecast something that is just not forecastable. So we take the easy route and just avoid these type of businesses and focus on something stable that is forecastable.
So that's a sell or an avoid
Yeah.
for Greatland Gold, our stock of the day. Thanks, guys.